Hello Internet, welcome to my channel where I, Dasha, help you level up your English on a weekly basis. In this video, I will first talk you through some general rules that you should remember when disagreeing with someone, and then I'll give you a few polite phrases that you can use in your daily life. Side note, I've prepared a PDF document containing useful phrases that you can use in different settings with a few exercises. You can download it today by hitting the link to it in the description box below. Oh, and let the YouTube algorithm know that you're enjoying this video by hitting that like button. So let's quickly jump into it. Now, I think you'd agree with me when I say that disagreeing with people can get messy, and I mean real messy. The reason being is that it can get very challenging to express your opinion to a person without offending them. People love being right and having others agree with them, but that's obviously unrealistic. Hey, take it from me, I love a good argument, which is why I studied law and worked in the legal field for all these years. But there's no need to get hot-headed and ruin relationships for the sake of a disagreement.
And I disagree.
With all that in mind, the first thing to do when disagreeing with someone is to stay calm and not take anything personally. Just take a few deep breaths so that you can speak more slowly and deliberately. You see, when we enter a state of panic, we tend to talk much louder and faster than we normally do, and this makes us look aggressive. And so if you're getting worked up in a disagreement, you want to pace yourself and speak in an even and calm tone. It not only makes the other person become more calm, but it will also make you seem more confident. And this is especially important in a work environment. Remember that your goal in a disagreement is to effectively present your ideas or opinion and not to simply attack the other person. Next, depending on the context of your disagreement, you need to identify a shared goal with the person you're talking to. This is especially relevant in a professional context where you're, for example, in disagreement with a colleague about an unrealistic project deadline they've set, and you're tempted to say something like, "It's ridiculous," or "You're stupid."
I'm offended.
But before even opening your mouth and saying anything, think about what is the common goal that you're both working towards. And you can even say it out loud because the other side might not understand that there's in fact a mutual goal to achieve. That way, you'll be the better person and seen as someone that's trying to push forward a shared goal rather than a person that's disagreeing for no reason whatsoever. Thirdly, listen carefully to what the other side has to say and don't just interrupt every 5 seconds because interrupting is plain old rude.
How rude!
And by listen carefully, I mean attentively and actively instead of zoning out and just waiting for your turn to speak. Again, that's incredibly rude. You won't be able to make valid points if you completely disregard what the other side is saying. Fourthly, try making statements with the personal pronoun I. These are so-called I statements.
Statement.
In doing so, you're taking responsibility for your part in the disagreement and showing that you're open to finding common ground. So let's imagine that you're talking to a friend and you disagree with something he says about, I don't know, his opinion on recycling plastic. You could respond by saying, "I understand where you're coming from, but my concern is that we're causing damage to the environment." You can see here that through this statement, you're communicating your personal concern about something and not attacking the other person in any way. Using I statements is a great way to smoothen a disagreement. And lastly, avoid using judgmental words that can offend a person because that will just sour your relationship and make things messy.
It's judgy. Pretty judgy.
So don't say phrases like, "You're wrong," "You must be joking," or "No way," or words like foolish, stupid, nonsense, hasty, or anything else that can upset a person. Be nice. Now we're gonna talk about what kind of polite phrases you can use in virtually any setting, be it when talking to friends or colleagues if you happen to disagree with them. Imagine that I say to you, "I think Titanic is the best movie of all time." Instead of saying, "I don't agree with you," you could reply, I'm not not sure I agree with you. It just sounds a bit softer than I don't agree with you, and it's generally a bit less direct. Alternatively, you could also say, I'm sorry, but I disagree with you about this, or I'm afraid I have to disagree with you on this one, and then continue to express your opinion. In this case, you could say, I'm afraid I have to disagree with you on this one. I think Pulp Fiction is hands down the best movie of all time. But what happens if you're having a disagreement about a more controversial topic, or something that's not as plain vanilla as expressing your feelings about a movie? So let's say that you and your best friend have a disagreement about whether Bitcoin is a hyped up trend that's bound to vanish someday, and you're of the opinion that Bitcoin is here to stay and that cryptocurrencies are the future, which they are. You could express yourself by saying one of the following phrases. I see what you're saying, but I think that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are going to become mainstream. Or, I take your point, but this isn't the way I see it. Instead, I think that Bitcoin is going to hit a price of $500,000 at some point this year. And if your friend makes a valid point, you should absolutely acknowledge it and say something like, true, that is a fair point, but I have to say I disagree, and then state your argument. Now, for the sake of an example, let's say that you and I are discussing whether smoking in public spaces should be illegal, and you think that yes, absolutely, it should be banned, but I'm saying it should be legal and that banning smoking outdoors will undermine people's freedom. Your reply to that could be, I see what you're saying, but I think that people's health is more important. Or, I respect your point of view, but in my opinion, a ban on smoking would reduce the risk of passive smoking. And by the way, as a reminder, if you ever need to disagree with a colleague or generally in a professional setting, you can use the phrases that we're talking about throughout this video. And speaking of the work environment, imagine that you and your colleague, let's call her Janet, were given a project and she proposes that you do it in a certain way, but you completely disagree because you think that her way is not efficient or cost effective. So if Janet then says, oh, I think by doing ABC, we're going to save a lot of time and money, you could reply by saying, not necessarily, or no, I'm not too sure about that, and then explain why. And then there's also phrases like, that's not always true, that you can use as polite alternatives to expressions like, no way. So for example, if I say that I think that everyone wants to have a secure job, you could respond, that's not always the case, or I beg to differ. It's way less aggressive than just replying, I completely disagree. Now, we can spend the entire day disagreeing with someone on a given topic. But what happens when we're disagreeing with someone on how to go about doing something and we can't see eye to eye? For instance, you and your partner have a disagreement about how to set up your monthly budget. Expressing your disagreement will not get you anywhere constructive. So instead of constantly using phrases that express disagreement, you could also propose solutions. Here's how you can do that. You could say, my suggestion is that we spend 20% of our combined income on rent. Or how about we spend less money on electricity in the winter by wearing warmer clothes instead of turning on the heating all day? And let's imagine that your partner then suggests something in return and says, how about we allocate more money into our food budget instead of our general entertainment budget? These solution-focused arguments are a great way to soften a disagreement, and it's an effective strategy to use in both professional and non-professional situations. But alas, there might be a time when it's impossible to come to an agreement. Or it could be that you simply don't want to waste your time arguing/disagreeing with someone.
Ain't nobody got time for that!
And that's okay. Disagreements can get very tiring. So instead of going through the constant back and forth of your opinions, you could just say, let's agree to disagree. What this phrase means is that you acknowledge that you will never agree with the other person on a particular topic and that you can move on to discussing other things instead. Well, that's all from me, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching. If you want more awesome English learning videos, then you might want to consider subscribing. And don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Remember to download the free PDF document that I made especially for you with useful phrases that you can use in different situations, as well as a bunch of practical exercises. All the best from me, bye-bye!